otherwise you get destroyed.
Yeah, so there's a long way between the dusty position of the African leadership having not picked up all the low hanging fruit around to a long way between that and the position that Elon finds himself, where he has to be basically, yes, there's always a power structure that you have to contend with, and that power structure could even be your customers or your subjects. If you're ultimate emperor, you still have to worry about the subjects and keep them, satisfied in a certain regard. So that is true. However, many such steps can be taken. Elon has kind of pushed back against many things that people said were impossible. And I don't know what your theory of the recent hatred of Elon is. Um, I'm sure you noticed it all of a sudden ran the radical political hatred of Elon by the typical NPC type people, right? The typical kind of liberal type of person, liberal in the American sense, liberal Democrat. For the longest time had no issues with Elon, and then all of a sudden Elon becomes Hitler. I'm sure you noticed that. What is your theory behind that kind of NPC reprogramming that we saw right before our eyes?
Yes, I think it's becoming too much of a renegade. Is what the the centrist liberal who are actually extreme leftist in disguise, or extreme right even. It's becoming a bit too much of a renegade. When he took over Twitter, a lot of people felt it was good, that he was going to unbuckle it for free speech, but he seems to be leaning Twitter more to the right. So I think Alex Jones is back on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. Trump's certainly back on Twitter.
To be
But
fair, by definition, it's like almost by inevitability. If you come into Twitter and you say, in other words, you're not starting from neutral ground. If you try to undo what Twitter has done, you're going to be leaning it to the right because of what they have done, right? Because if I'm making sense, right?
yes, but is that leaning to the right that the liberal who are in disguise, some form of pecuniary extremist, that is what they cannot abide, you know? So there are certain voices that they feel should be consigned to the annals of history because they feel they're too extreme. Alex Jones being a good example of that. So they don't really want certain types of voices platforms at all
What
because the
is? Do you
cost.
have any thoughts regarding that particular? So you said it could be extreme left, or it could be extreme right. I find it more amongst the people who want who. So, what is the problem that we're describing, right? The problem whereby you think that silencing people, right, and just put them. These people are. History is going to. These people should be relegated to the trash bin of history, and they're not moving in the direction of history. People who speak in this terms of like, you're not with the direction of history, and hence we should put you away, right? It is popular amongst the young. It is popular amongst the left. In other words, people who think that somehow through time and through just the movement of the universe, certain people and certain positions, intellectual positions, can just basically be ignored, right? Without recognizing that this is not never the case. No, nothing. Things don't just die off because you think these once these old people die, then all of a sudden conservatism or people who would prefer that certain structures be in place rather than to try to upturn any structure will simply disappear. No, it will not disappear. So I'm drawing a dichotomy here between people who seem to recognize that, look, simply just saying that these people are no longer could be silenced and put away, therefore I win because after all history is on my side, versus people who recognize that no, there is nothing, you're not, just because you silence the person doesn't mean they're going to disappear, and history is not moving inevitably towards your side. Hence you just feel that you can. Is this a good way of creating this divide? What do you say about this divide? I tend to see that it on the side of people whom are on the left, simply because that's an artifact of just being the fact that they're for change. You have young people who's always part of the cohort of the left, and young people think that the world is going to change, and conservative ideas are just ideas of old people, and let's just wait for them to die or whatever, and they need not be listened to. and then the people whom are meanwhile, I think that on the conservative side, it it is more, shall we say, understood that there will always be young people and there will always be radicals, and you don't just silence them. This is a perennial issue you will have. There will always be people who are at the bottom of the totem pole trying to overturn things, whether it be things in terms of the realm of thought and politicking, and what is it to be a human being, and whether you know what it is to be a male versus female. People are trying to overturn that. People are also trying to overturn the economic hierarchies and all hierarchies of all kinds. And you're not going to disappear them by simply stopping them from speaking on Twitter. One side seems to recognize that, another side does not seem to recognize that. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes. The first thing I'll say is freedom of speech is not absolute. So there's no such thing as freedom of speech or freedom of expression. Because for every speech and an expression, there's equal and opposite reactions to it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that there's certain speech and thoughts and ideologies that I think should be deplatformed. So that's the second thing. And no, I disagree with you. If you deplatform certain speech and ideas, I think through time and history, it will dissipate and ebb away, and maybe not die out. It might even well die out, because if there's a reward and punishment system that the platform it, it will quickly die off. And as people reprogram into new ways of thinking, then those things will be consigned further and further back into the annals of history, almost to the point of dissipation. So that's my thought on that. But is that altogether a good thing? No, because that's some form of programming taking place right there. But then, of course, we're all subject to programming anyway. But who is programming us and to what direction is really where the conversation is. So we're all being programmed, but how are we being programmed, and how do we want to be programmed? So the programming wraps around um, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, etc. So for you to have those freedoms, you have to have the fact base, the knowledge base, the enough of the acuities and the backdrops to form thoughts. And for you to have all of the backdrop to form thoughts, then you have to have as much access as you can to all of the pro and against arguments are in play. But there are certain arguments that are so extreme, and there are certain things so fantasized, and more to it, there are certain things so dangerous that they should not have the platform for expression. Because if they have that platform for expression, even though you say the vast majority will have the discernment to be able to sieve through, there's a significant enough of a minority that might be co-opted into that unwittingly, and imbue it as a working hypothesis. So so
Okay,
so
so
uh,
if we take a step back from that political prescription which you gave, and then we just said, okay, let's talk about one man and his particular Overton window, as they call it, right? What what's the spread of acceptable discourse, right? I would suspect that you are able to, or it is not against, in other words, the more the merrier for one man. The more people who are able to say even strange things, that works with your game. It is not a challenge to you that there are more and more people whom say things that are anti your particular position. You don't feel threatened by that. As a matter of fact, it might even be advantageous to you if there's a little bit more chaos. But for some people, they would prefer things to be a little bit more narrowly controlled. Is that correct? Now, besides the prescription which you gave, which is fine regarding allowing certain things to be out there, because after all, not everyone is as discerning, and you do not want to a particular cohort of the population being kind of co-opted by extreme views. But you personally, one man, I suspect, will have a lot of latitude regarding what you allow on your chessboard.
no, I have a lot of latitude because in a contained discourse, I think the more extreme a view there is, that should be welcomed in a contained sort of discourse, because of course the logic of it or the lack thereof will just ridicule or affirm it. So I see that. But when I say a more what's that term when you gather things together, gather people together in some sort of experimental something, there's a term for it, it's not coming to mind at the moment, but in a more contained space, then with some form of moderation, then whatever extreme views can be expressed. But in a space that is unmoderated and is unfiltered, and you are saying those views can come in, and if they are countered, they are countered. If they are not, then they pass through. Then they can that which seems to be the sort of space that Elon Musk is trying to create. So he's saying that okay, on this Twitter now X, anybody, no matter how far out there or even more to it, how dangerous your thoughts are, come and have the expression of them and let the space deal with it as it will. So that's a dangerous stance to take, and that is why you see people recoiling away from him somewhat, because that's somewhat of a German Socialist Party sort of a mindset.
It's
You know what the German Socialist Party is?
I think I do, but
Okay.
I think it should be there should be a kind of like a game. How long can you talk about politics before you bring up the German Socialist Party? Like it's the inevitable thing that comes up when
Do
anybody
you
wants
not
to
see
make
an
it.
element of that in Elon Musk's tonality somewhat? Because he is from
So
that stock, he's from that stock anyway.
um, I choose not to speculate in that direction. Now I can speculate regarding just what he's saying and if it does align with the German National Socialists. But if you talk about the stock and things like that, that is just it's unfair to start pointing in certain directions, right? Like look at him, he's from this way, and his granddad was this, and because you can always take people's lineage and twist it in certain ways. So it's a bit unfair. Now, what I do recognize with someone like Elon is he's an extreme case individually, right? And nothing special. We just have these people who are a little bit on the extreme side. They like risk. They go boldly. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. That entrepreneurial spirit. He happens to be one that has kind of won many times over, and taken losses too. But an extreme character overall. Now, this extreme character is not very politically. I don't want to say politically savvy because, well, but let me just say it. Not very politically savvy. There's another person whom, for example, who he started PayPal with, Peter Thiel, another fellow billionaire. There's another guy, David Sachs, also part of the PayPal mafia, and the PayPal mafia is this group of people whom started back then when Elon made his first company X. Was not really his first company, but a company called X, the first iteration of X, which then joined PayPal, and then this group of people have gone on to create multi-billion-dollar companies after that, right? YouTube, LinkedIn, Yammer, many other things, Palantir. All these companies came out of this particular group of people whom started PayPal together, right? So these are extreme folks. I like a bit of that kind of swashbuckling, devil may cry attitude to life, as described earlier. The heroic life, if you will. But I think that he doesn't understand that in order to present yourself, especially if you're an outlier to the world, you need to filter it through some kind of politic, if you will. It's because what you're saying is not trans. You're speaking only to a minority of people whom hear you for what you're saying, which these people, for example, are the extreme case of being very comfortable with chaos and change. The more rapid and upsetting, the better, even, right? And this is the kind of world that they live in. Most people are not that at all. So when you say something, the way people will hear it is not just, oh, well, this is that type of guy. And it's like, no, they're going to hear something that is within their framework of possible interpretations. One of which is German Nationalist Party. Like it sounds like that, a German National Socialist. When I hear this, right? So I think that's the issue because I know other people just like Elon, a couple of whom I just mentioned, the David Sachs character and Peter Thiel's character, whom when they give their worldview and their ideology is way more filtered through the canon, if you will, the canon of political philosophy, right? And it's going to be a lot more philosophical that we're able to place them um, in things that seem more, shall we say, acceptable because they're going through certain lines and align themselves with certain things, maybe it be Edmund Burke or whatever ways in which they're aligning themselves in order to get their message across. Elon Musk is not politically philosophical in that sense at all. Hence, I see
I
what you mean.
disagree.
Oh, he never. Um, what do you
I
disagree with?
you say it's not that it doesn't have that political
It,
thrust.
it does not. It does not present it that way. Is basically what I'm saying. He does not
All
go
right.
out there. He doesn't go out there and yeah.
Have you heard of this Churchillian phrase? A riddle wrapped in a mystery inside
Okay.
an enigma. Have you heard
I
of that?
yes.
A riddle
Yes.
wrapped in a mystery
I've heard it. Yeah.
inside an enigma. That's a Churchillian phrase. So that's Elon Musk right there.
So
Um,
it, it
Elon Musk is very political, and
no,
he
no,
has.
I'm just saying from the norm me perspective, okay, whom is expecting to see certain types of things. That's why I started out by saying that he's an extreme character, and that while you could understand this extreme character, but when the way he puts himself out. Now, one of the things that is implied in what you just last said is that everything, this is all by design. In other words, yes, and I agree with that. That he's not an idiot, of course not. But
Do you know
in
what his
fact,
design is? Because I think I do, but you land and yeah.
okay, so this might all be by design, which I have no, I do not doubt his either intellect or cohesiveness. I think he's very cohesive in terms of his general thrust. For example, the fact that his first company back then was called X, and now he's creating this X again, and he has this kind of general idea of creating the new world currency, which is what he was trying to do when he started X and joined PayPal, by the way. And he's trying to do again, perhaps now with the help of AI and stuff. So I think he's rather cohesive. I think also that he is rather intelligent. I think from the point of view of the regular person, he does not package his his political thoughts in a way in which they can understand at all.
All right, brilliant. So as I said, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. That's how I see. That's a Churchillian phrase, as you know. That's how I see Elon Musk. A riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. I think he's very political. I think he's politically savvy, and I think is probably one of the more, if not the most politically advanced people we have on the planet at the moment. Elon Musk is a one world proponent, so one world government proponent, and he wants to be the leader of that one world. So that one world is not really the boundaries of your geographical space or the might of your military strength. It's the control of the world in terms of their thoughts and feelings, and that is what this X project is all about. And we're seeing the unraveling of that now. So he has that X space now, which is a global reach, and he's now having his expression via that portal, and that expression, it harkens towards that German National Socialist Party sort of mindset, which you have to say some of his antecedents trace to. So he's a one world proponent who sees himself as a leader of the one world, of the free world. He understands that the future of the world is borderless and boundless, and is mind control essentially, and it's not a weaponized world. So how many more nuclear bombs can you drop to control people? So you have to control them mentally, and he's taking the first step into that space. And you can see the fledglings of that unraveling already.
So, um, so let's talk about the if we use the flagpole of the National Socialists as, indicating what this thought contains, that's perfectly fine. But it does not, it doesn't, it doesn't make it such that we don't go into the particular thought itself, because there are many things. For example, Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, whom people say that the National Socialists absorbed some of his thought. There are many certain types of premises regarding the direction that the world is moving towards that might be correct, whether you agree with the National Socialists or not. Um, there are many things about human nature, right, within the premise of such people that are simply true, whether you agree with what they ended up doing or not. Just like you can't say that Karl Marx was completely wrong about everything he said. Of course not. He was right about over 90% of the things that he said. Okay. Even if he was correct about 99, it's then what you do with it becomes the question. And then if all these people messed up and did all kinds of crazy things with it. But anyways, the point is, some of the things that you mentioned regarding the direction that the world is going towards, I'm sure you would agree that that is the direction the world is going towards, especially given your general technological kind of outlook, the way you see the world of decentralization, which also means centralization in a certain in a weird way, right? It tends to happen that way. By the way, one of the examples or microcosm is that the kind of like the internet. The internet decentralizes and then centralizes, right? It's like, oh, freedom to you to communicate, and you can send email, blah blah blah. Next thing,
Yeah,
there's this thing called
but it's a
Google
more
that controls.
democratized. It's a more democratized centralization. So it's a
Yeah,
it's like the Roman arena sort of thumbs up, thumbs down, very primal sort of centralization. So the argument wins through rather than brute force. That's really where this decentralized but
yeah,
centralized space that we're moving into, where it draws its strength from.
correct. And some of these are part of the things that, given your projection of where Elon is going, some of these premises are part of what he is seeing and where he's going, right? So whether you characterize it as National Socialist, it's probably something that you agree with 90% of, right? So that then the only worry will be, well, oh, it's that individual that is saying these things, which I would say on my show at some random point at night. But if that guy says it, then it's a problem. Is that part of what's going on here? Like, we can agree that the world is going in a particular direction. We can agree that human nature is, such and such, and that, leadership is necessary, and that somebody then decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to tie all these things together, and I'm going to be the one that is there. But then we don't like the person saying it. Is that the case here?
No, no, that's not the case. And it's not even a worry; it's a concern. My concern is that somebody like Elon Musk, for instance, who is a highly politicized sort of individual, but tries to guise himself in a liberalized, uh, humanitarian globalist. That's how he tries to package himself. But he has clearly defined as somewhat pro-right and some left-leaning as well, but essentially fundamentally pro-right ideological thrust. So that's who he is. So he has now probably the biggest platform in the world, probably even in terms of impact and usage and influence, bigger than YouTube, bigger than everything else. So he has now that space to somewhat because he controls the algorithm of that space. He controls the essential flow of the narrative. Who he determines the winners and losers on how the thrust of the debate goes in that space, and through that control, he can guide the world. Just subliminal imprinting of our ideological leanings before you know it. I don't. I think proceed, but with caution. That's my recommendation for Elon Musk. Proceed, but with caution. He's a dangerous guy.
Well, yes, yes, yes. In the sense that, after all, everything that is useful and has potential and has the capacity to change is dangerous, and most other things are boring, right? So yes, I would agree with you in that regard. Now, with
Yeah, but let
regards
me ask
to
you a question. Let me ask you a question, Ike, because I sense that you lean towards him a little bit. Why is that?
um, I'm just figuring out which particular direction to go with. Um, I mentioned the heroic aspect earlier, right? In the sense that, and if we put it within the context of capitalism, the context of the world, the economy, and organizations that exist within there, that most people within the capitalist system are managerial capitalists. These are, the people whom have control of organizations, from the board to the operations officers and their people, middle management, all these people. They are all managerial capitalists. Managerial capitalists are kind of like a natural enemy of mine, personality wise. Okay. They are very different from what I would call entrepreneurial capitalists, right? Managerial capitalists are participating in capitalism while telling you that, while playing woke games with you, for example, right? They're very, these are people whom are very much capitalists, but they would preach anti-capitalism all day, with their kind of regular middle of the road liberal platitudes, while being the chief of X, Y, and Z at Twitter, the old Twitter, for example, right? And these people, they're very risk averse, and they're very highly dependent on systems. They don't like change, and they don't want to upset the apple cart. And there's a certain type of politic that surrounds that. Okay, there's a certain kind of making sure everybody reads from the same choir book and such, that I just I find repulsive. Again, personality wise, I'm not trying to kill these people, right? And I'm not even saying that, denying the right to exist. I understand that necessarily this is going to be the bulk of the human population, because after all, how many entrepreneurs do you need? You just need one or two to create something. You either create a new empire or a new company, and then managerial machines take over. But I just don't like the ethos, the ethic, and the politics of managerial capitalists. And hence I lean towards that. That's people of the Musk strand, if I may. And I understand that this is a simplification, right? But that is a big part of what's going on.
Do you think Elon Musk is a force for the greater good? And even if you do you think there should be an element of caution to it? And if you do, what caution would you put in place? So is it a cause for the is it a force for the greater good? Do you think people should take him but with caution? And if you do, what would you caution people about?
Okay, I don't think he as an individual is a force for the greater good. I do think that what he represents, though, tends to be where, in other words, he represents, again, that changing aspect, the aspect of humanity that wants to go out there into the wild, whether it's into Mars or, take over what was otherwise a strictly government function, such as, the SpaceX, or, take over, challenge the the car industry and things like that. People want to just fundamentally change things, or like being into this crypto thing and trying to change the world's payment, which is what he was trying to do right from the days of PayPal. I think that out of that element, as described earlier, is where you find people that are able to make change, and they take advantage of opportunities, and most of these end up, failing, right? And end up, not working out, but then some do work out. So I think what it represents is good. The second aspect, which is, okay, should there be any caution? I say yes, you should take it with caution by definition. And I think that if you compare someone like Elon Musk with Zuckerberg, for example, that Elon Musk has already kind of laid down the ways in which he can be checked and cautioned. In other words, he did not create an organization like, you see, people like Zuckerberg, for example, they create an organization that they cannot be ousted from. Okay. They're very, very much insulated, and they have this in their kingdom. The way that Musk has his companies, he could be voted out, right? So he plays high stakes. but he has skin in the game, right? Now, when you play that game, it's an interesting game because actually, in order to stay in power, you need to take more risks because that's why the people want you there. But the more risk you take, the more chances that you might get kicked out because, but over time, you become this force of personality almost that whereby the people are like, it's wild, crazy Elon, but he has had these wins and we do appreciate this. And by the way, this is a little secret of the whole world of capitalism, the world of, let's say, venture capitalism, such and such, given the rareness of the entrepreneurial capitalists, the real entrepreneurial capitalists, not these people who watch a YouTube video and all of a sudden they're entrepreneurs, whatever the fuck that means, right? That spirit, the people who embody that spirit, are actually rare. And venture capitalists, in other words, capital in general, love those people. Okay, they want an Elon Musk to exist. They need that guy who started WeWork, people who are bold and are willing to sign on the dotted line and really go out there, right? They want those people to exist because those are people who bring back gold sometimes, right? So the checks should be making sure that they have skin in the game, that they can indeed face repercussions, for example, from the advertisers, right? Or all these other kinds of things, as opposed to certain people who build these fiefdoms and completely insulate themselves from actually real world contact. Some of the Bill Gates like type figures or the George Soros like type figures whom don't really have any real contact with reality or a marketplace that can check them. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does in part, but it doesn't convince me. Do you know that Elon Musk probably has, well, almost definitely has the most satellites out there in the skies? Is Skylink something? Do you know that?
Correct. Yes.
All right. There was an interview that I was watching, or just a snippet of information that passed through just as I was walking by on the internet. And I heard him saying that the president of the Ukraine, whatever Zelensky, that he was asking Elon Musk for some sort of a satellite movement that will aid their war efforts against the Russians. So that's how powerful this guy has become. So is that powerful? And add on to that is the richest man in the world. So if you want to theorize to the extremes, then are we theorizing to the point that Elon is succeeding where Adolf failed? Is that where we're going?
Very different arenas. And the thing about this skin in the game arena is that I don't think it's an arena where you can be very dangerous. You can be successful up to the point whereby, because you have this Skylink crap, you are the only system that can provide internet in a war zone. That is not, it's an artifact of your success, but it is not as though now all of a sudden you have this political power and army and this and that and the other. You're still that's a good example of a kind of a strange outcome, right? A strange consequence of success. Okay, you would then have to balance it out with, okay, well, what are the other ways in which something like Starlink is helping? And maybe, yes, maybe there should be, some people maybe competing against him in that regard, so that there is there's several people whom can provide internet service in a war zone. Okay, so I take your point in that. Now, the arena that the politics of pool, the politics of politics, which Mr. Adolf was participating in, is very different from the politics of the marketplace. Um, you in one of these arenas, you can be very, very much
Sorry,
out of.
Ike. Sorry, Ike. What politics do you think Elon Musk is playing? I just want to be clear on that. Do you think he's playing an economic politics? Do you think he's playing humanitarian politics? Or do you think he's playing a domination politics? Or do you think he's not playing politics at all?
Domination politics. The humanitarian thing that he tries to cloak. And I don't even really think he's trying to cloak it. He just says some humanitarian things from time to time that don't really convince me of anything, and that are, in my view, not even necessary.
He wants to
It's
give his
like,
agenda a human face. That's all. Uh,
yeah, and for me,
do
it's
you
like
not
not
think his
even,
wings should
yeah.
be clipped? Do you not think that guy? I don't think we've yet had anybody as powerful as this guy ever.
Yeah, but
That wasn't a militarized.
people always put
Yeah,
a human face to whatever bullshit they're doing. You go to a hotel and they tell you that the reason they give you a low flow shower is to save the world. The low flow shower is just to save their freaking water bill, right? I mean, this is what people do, right? But I don't think Elon even needs to have that veneer of human that he puts on, which I think people can kind of see through as kind of like a robot thing, anyways. I think he's playing the game of domination, and it is these characters, the heroic characters that I described. These are by definition, it's an amoral situation, right? Icarus flies to the sun, gets burned, Yeah, but hey, it was a great flight. It's a great life when you fly to the sun, and maybe you get burned, maybe you burn some other people, right? So I do think he's playing the politics of domination from a very singular.
with a soft glove.
Yeah, with a soft glove, and I think because it doesn't, you don't have to, given the way he's trying to play it, you don't have to have a hard glove because again, he is doing it based on the market and a certain type of um when you call, people have this, people like to hate on Elon even before they started hating on him for politics. They like to hate on him and other people, like let's say Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, because they don't understand how innovation works. They keep on talking about the fact that Elon, uses his engineers, or he's not really that smart. And it's like, dude, get the hell out of here. Anyone, people, you just know those types of people have never built anything. They never built anything in their life. They don't understand the way the market works. If you think that it's just sitting around being a brainiac that actually gets things done in the world, I mean, you're foolish, very foolish. It takes a lot of skill to do the kinds of things that the people like Steve Jobs do. And yes, he's not the best engineer. Wozniak was the engineer. Or Bill Gates was not the best engineer. But it doesn't matter. Those engineers are not going to do what these guys do. And also, they need to also have the engineering prowess and at least some level of technological sharpness in order to be able to navigate the space. So if you're playing within this space of technology, right, you don't really need to have too much of a soft glove if you win, and then are able to kind of use the wins that you had from the past to kind of propel you forward with momentum and be able to be the first to get in line with certain government regulators and so on and so on, right? Because people will just see it that, well, hey, he took a rocket and landed it back, and this is quite great. This has never been done before. It's a huge leap. Hence, let's give him more, right? So you don't even need to say much about how good you are. You just make the rockets work. And then obviously you have a plan, a cohesive plan of, I'm going to create X, which is going to be the one app of the world. It's going to have the AI capability with messages and financial slash money slash everything, and dominate in that way.
Have we ever had, by your memory, anybody outside of a military person, a ruler, anything of that sort? Have we ever had anybody more powerful than this guy ever in the history of mankind? Not a
um,
ruler, not an emperor, not a some military guy that's brutalized his way into prominence. Have you ever had just a man on the street, from the streets, be as powerful as this guy ever in the history of mankind?
yeah, the other types of power that have risen to this level have tended to be on the financial side of the world. In other words, the Rothschild type people, and maybe perhaps even J.P. Morgan himself at some point. But the quality of that power tends to be very different, right? That quality of the power of finance is different from, because again, it tends not to have a lot of natural uh, um, fans, acolytes, right? You're rich and you control stuff, but you're not a hero at the same time. The industrialist tends to be more able to be a hero. We've had people, for example, that in the train, in the times when the trains were crisscrossing the American continent, many people became billionaires. The Vanderbilts, for example, training in trains and shipping and such. But even when they were able to be somewhat heroic, there was always the anti-industrialist person or group that takes them down. Elon, given the particular uh, the ethos and the kind of mystique that is around the type, Silicon Valley, which he came out of, right? As opposed to coming out of an oil business or something like that, which is a little bit more tarred, pardon the pun. But coming out of there, you can be super powerful, big time industrialist, and get a lot of acolytes, and with the accolades that come with it, but not a lot of the tarnishing aspects, and that only comes from maybe because you're being politically bold and saying certain things. In other words, if he was quiet, perhaps he'd be even more powerful. Who knows?
You know he's only 52.
Yeah, he's doing it right.
So with technology and the money that he has, what are we looking at? Another 30, 35, 40 years.
Yeah,
In another 10 years, this guy will rule. He's heavily embedded in the artificial intelligence space. And I think he has the front foot there. He controls the satellites from the skies, and he controls Twitter.
and he's going to control the chips that he's going
And
to be putting in people's bodies by
no, I think the
Neuralink.
Chinese are trying to stop him from that. I think they are going to take over Taiwan soon. So,
Oh no, but at least the Neuralink embedded chips I was referring to, not necessarily but he's
oh,
going to, because he has that company Neuralink where, and they actually are making progress. It's not just some fantasy in terms of human enhancement by implanting you with all kinds of robotics and stuff.
do you not see an agenda coming through? Do you not see the pieces of the jigsaw are fleshing out some sort of
What, trying to create a master race of Ubermenches that are
no,
bionic
no,
people
no,
that he
not
controls, or what?
not no, I think there are certain types of people that are trying to point the direction of the world, and these people, they know that the direction of the world is not in military might so much, which is what people like America, etc., etc., depend on, and they are increasing this as the world gets richer. They are also now concluding, excuse me, they are also now concluding that it's not so much in the financial muscle as well. So ultimately, the control of the world will be the control of the narrative, which is a softer way, a more elegant way, a more flowerized way of talking about mind control. So if this guy is controlling artificial intelligence, if he has the front foot there, and he has the portal to funnel it through via Twitter, and he controls the satellites from the skies, and he's the richest man in the world.
Interesting.
That guy is dangerous, man. He is.
I assume you're familiar with Aldous Huxley's book, The Brave New World, which was also made into a movie. Um, but you must also be familiar with 1984 by George Orwell. Now, Orwell there has this more what Big Brother is with guns and steel and cages and hard censorship, while in the Brave New World, you are controlled by giving you what you want or what you think you want, right? You have drugs and you have free sex and you have this, but there are certain mechanisms of controlling you that way by mind control and the illusion of freedom and certain other types of things. So, yes, within the Aldous Huxley Brave New World, control you with your mind is the more feasible outcome of future dictatorships, future domination, and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, it's not out of tune with human nature, and by that I mean the nature of the masses. These people want to be ruled one man. Okay, I see the chaos that goes on in your channel when, I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but we know who the empty skulls are and we know how they operate. These people are empty. Shout out to Madam Zita, right? The headless mob is the headless mob. These
What do you
sheep.
mean empty skulls? You don't come on that often. What do you mean empty skulls? You don't come on that often. Eh? Oh, you got that. Okay.
but but yeah, the sheep want to be sheep, right? So so I mean, there's nothing. It's just inevitable that people are sheep right now. They'll be sheep in the future. They're sheep to Facebook, or they were sheep to the television set before, or they will be sheep to some kind of provincial interpretation of a religion that or whatever. Sheep to what their silly tribal. It's just freaking people, man. So
No,
yeah,
no,
so
the masses have to be led. I think everybody knows that the masses have to be led, but in which direction and to whose advantage? So um it's always to the leader's advantage. I think everybody concedes that. But is there enough benevolence within that leader for the led to be somewhat advantaged too? So that goes to the leanings, and that goes to that German National Socialist. So it yeah.
it's, yeah, I can't help but think that you're kind of trolling a little
Would
bit.
you want to live in a world that is led by Elon Musk? Is a question.
I'd rather that than the thousand people whom will be the alternative, and this thousand people will be of the managerial capitalist sort, whom simply just want to go to Davos and sing kumbaya and let everything be neat. And while they're going to kill you in a nice surgical way, while pronouncing your pronouns correctly, right? That's not a good way to die. you know, I think Elon will shoot me directly more in the face or something like that, and I don't know
Okay,
something.
will the world fare better led by Elon Musk or Ike or Germain?
Jesus Christ.
No, no, not Jesus Christ is not an option. He leads the world anyway. Will the world fare better under his leadership or yours?
Oh, definitely mine, of course. But ultimately, though,
Or why is that? Do you think you will be more benevolent and more human or humane? Just from how you know yourself and how you read him.
I think that the benevolence factor is not going to be the issue here because I don't think that benevolence describes an intention that rarely ever leads to the outcome that you might think, an outcome that matches the intention, right? And I'm sure you know what I mean because we're dealing with complex systems. And your idea of benevolence, and then you push this button, and we know all the unintended outcomes that come from these roads to hell that are paved with good intentions. So it will not. It is not going to be a function of benevolence. It'll be a more of a function of me understanding a level of self-sacrifice, if you will, in the sense that for the system to actually work, I mentioned before that you don't need too many entrepreneurs. You only need this kind of change moments to happen every once in a while, anyways. And then the future does indeed belong to the meek and the managerial capitalists and the people who will steward a basic kind of gray and boring system into the future, right? It is in that understanding of your incapacity to be all, not just you, but your type and what you represent. It's not going to be the be all end all, and whatever your wisdom happens to be regarding whether you're benevolent or not, is not going to be the thing either. It's going to be the oscillation of the system, going back from the change makers, whom acting in the time when change is needed, and then things have to settle down to the people. The people, after all, like I was telling Kaiser the other day, I was like, and all of this, you're asking me a ridiculous question in the sense that it all sounds rather self-aggrandizing, and the statements I'm making now are also might sound that way as well. But I believe that the world belongs to the masses, right? By doing this, I'm saying that I'm not one of the masses in certain parameters, right? But I'm not one of these stupid outliers who thinks that it is my world. No, it is not my world. Um, Me and my cohort are a small percentage of the population, and this is not our world per se. It is their world. So if they have to
Avoid the hoi
operate,
polloi, Abby. Avoid the hoi polloi at all costs. Are you one of those?
I,
Are you a snob? But what's going on here?
I'm just I'm saying that I'm saying it's their world. Why you? I did not say so.
You say I'm not one of them. They keep me away from the smellies. Avoid the hoi pollois. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean you can interpret you know. Well,
I'm
yes,
only joking. I'm only joking. Carry on.
yeah.
But no, I think you get the wider thrust. I'm not especially offended by Elon Musk. And if you ask me if I wanted Elon Musk to be in charge of something, I would rather have him in charge of something because he seems to get things done better and more effectively than most.
Mhm.
But if you ask me if I want him to be in charge of everything, then that's a different conversation. Because
Yes.
I want to know how he instinctually functions. I want to know what his core. I'm not going to bring morality into it because you say that the conversation is getting somewhat fluffy. But you want to know the texture of his being in order to know that he can be vested that much trust. And some of the unpeelings of that veneer that is coming out on this Twitter narrative, and how he's positioning and posturing, and then him telling people to go f themselves, and then going on bended knees, barely 2 seconds later. He didn't even follow through as much as um, what's it, that rapper, whatever is Kanye did.
Kanye.
So there's something, there's this British politician, very senior, and Widdicombe, her name is Anne Widdicombe. She's a very articulate, very erudite sort of a woman, very buxom. You know, that stout, staunch, very rotund sort of English looking. She's that build, but very, she cuts through when she speaks. So there was this guy, something Hewitt, I can't quite remember his name. He was vying for leadership of a party to become the prime minister, and he had a good chance. But this woman just said one phrase about that guy, and that phrase destroyed his political career within just the pronouncement of that phrase. Do you know what she said about the man?
What did she say?
She said there is something of the night about him. There is something of the night about him. And she did not need to say more than that because people knew somewhat that guy, very impressive, but somewhat a little bit of something. And when she said that thing, when she said that phrase, it captured the essence of everything, and everybody had clarity on him. And his political career destroyed after that. It just ebbed and faded away. There is something of the night about that guy, and really to borrow from and within come and then to hang that medal on Elon Musk, there is something of the night about that fella.
Well, understood, and that's a good one. It's that idea of painting your opponent as dark, which is another word that and I think what's her name, Hillary Clinton tried to do it with Trump, but she's not very. She didn't land it correctly. There was a time in the campaign where they started using the word dark, like it was like, oh, he's dark, dark, like you know how the news cycle goes, and then you start seeing things repeat over and over, and dark, dark, dark. But it didn't. But it was too late, I guess, and it didn't work
Yeah,
for
but
Trump.
nuance doesn't play in American politics, so it wouldn't have resonated. If she did that in the UK, Trump would have been destroyed because they speak in nuance in the UK.
Yeah, perhaps that is true. Regarding the darkness of Elon, you see, it is the darkness that is in all of us, and I don't mean to. What I mean is, I don't. When I see the darkness in Elon, I'm like, okay, it's not anything especially dark, right? It isn't. And again, I like that definite darkness as opposed to the nebulous fake angels that are on the other side. Like the side represented by the New York Times interviewer, the people who don't necessarily tell you what they want. Everything is kind of jumbled behind all these sets of incentives and complicated political maneuvers and whataboutisms, and nothing is ever quite direct. The darkness that is in someone like an Elon is just the human darkness. That is, it's ambitious. It is rather, it has something of the narcissism associated with it. It is bold. It is dangerous. A little bit uncertain and scary. But all that is, I think, well understood. More well understood than it's like, for example, people think that the way to uh, guarantee certain beneficial outcomes is to remove the profit motive. You know, it's a silly little childish thing. The profit motive is perhaps the best to have. It is very black and white. If one man, you and I are part of a organization where the profit motive is not the thing. Jesus Christ, you know how many machinations and backhanded backroom dealings, and who knows what anyone's agenda or intentions are, right? So there's this idea that, oh, and I'm using it as an analogy now. It's not, I'm not, in terms of that profit motive. I'm just is here to exemplify one of those basic, well understood, quote unquote, dark aspects of humans, as opposed to the multifarious and nebulous, crazy other motivations when you decide to hide it and people start saying, "Oh, I don't have the profit motive." Well, but what exactly is your motive now? Does it mean all of a sudden you become an angel? No. So I tend to prefer the Elon Musk type darkness. I think it's a well understood and very basic type darkness, right?
Yeah, profit over everything, Abby.
Yeah, profit domination. That's easy. I mean, that's you know, all the other weird shit. And by the way, I also like it to be more individual. Um, it suits my temperament. Back to the question about why something about Elon Musk, why I lean in this direction. It's because of that individualist kind of thrust. There is a I cannot trust people whom couch all their responses based on some kind of strange utilitarian, what is going to make everybody comfortable, what am I supposed to say, aka politically correct kind of coat that they put on. There's just something very, very off-putting about that mode of being to me. It is highly irrational. It and it just, I mean, personally, it has always been my enemy. Like, people have always my enemies have always come from that side of people who want to claim some kind of follow the party line, follow the people. Why do you think you're special? Why do you think you're outside? Why don't you just do what other people say? I find it to be rather unthinking. It's very boring, very uninteresting. These people never do anything interesting in their lives. You just want to talk. You just want to sit around, gossip about each other. Put the whole idea of licking your finger and putting it in the air to see where the wind is blowing. How does everybody in the room feel? What are the things I'm supposed to say and not supposed to say?
No,
And
no,
that's
no.
what guides my whole being.
Ike, you should not, you should not really show so much impatience towards people who don't really follow the metric of success as you have or as you understand it. Because really, it's only really that you understand it and you are able to walk those steps that makes you successful. If everybody is able to walk those steps and understand those steps, then success will not have the luster that it does have. So it's not. It may well seem simple to you, but it might not necessarily, and almost certainly, it's not attainable to the vast majority. So that's why successful people are outliers, and that's why somewhat there's somewhat of a disingenuity to a successful person saying that, but the metric of success is just this processes of steps. So yeah, you can take those steps, but not everybody else can. So I'm sure you understand that.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. I do. And that's how I was like giving this autobiographical experience of being, because part of what I'm talking about here is very simply a personality thing, and by personality I just mean basic psychology parameters here. And um, being an introverted, intuitive type that also has a great penchant for action, you're gonna and you're this makes you a minority, and you're gonna be up against the typical extroverted, perhaps maybe non-intuitive types, especially the non-intuitive types are most annoying. I see you as most likely, probably 99% sure you have to be intuitive because you're quite comfortable with the meta space, the idea space, conceptual space. You don't get caught up in these little side fights that I'm sure you see every day on your panel where people just seem to miss the point. it just it's like, oh my god, like that is not the point. Anyways, so um being judged by those people when they do, in instances where they do any kind of power over you, can be kind of grating, like, oh my god, here they come again with their dull, pedantic kind of no thinking and trying to get you to go in line with things. But I understand. I mean, wisdom, psychological development, spiritual development, just after being a decent human being, means that you have to then recognize such things as I've mentioned before, like it is their world, A. Um, B, my being is also full of shit, like and all that. I'm not completely, I'm not that much of an idiot. Of course, I understand that 100%. And then I even understand the purpose. If you look from an ecosystem perspective, the purpose of these different types, and understand, but overall, I would then say this to, to put the capstone on my side is, what I find is that I understand them more than they ever will understand me, and that's fine. That's fine though. But it's just a fact. It's just a fact that I have to say that I kind of understand. Like, hey, take the whole kind of extrovert introvert thing, or kind of going along with the line. Like, I understand why you have to do what you do and go out there and be with those people and have that conversation and feel like part of the tribe, right? I understand it, but they don't ever seem to want to understand the cat. It's almost like a cat and dog thing. It's like, but everybody looks at the cat suspiciously. Like, why are they alone over there? Do they think they're better? And people immediately judge the cat as thinking that the cat thinks that it is better than them, right? Which is the story of my life. And I'm talking about just being an introvert. I'm not talking about even being great at anything. Being an intuitive introvert, somebody that is into the realm of ideas and kind of keeps to themselves. Other people start looking at you as though like, well, do you think you're better than me? So it's that it's mainly their problem, not mine.
All right. Do you know what do you know what Marie Antoinette, the wife of was it Louis the 16th or 17th? Do you know what she's famous for, Marie Antoinette?
Well, I mean, letting them eat cake and dying. What else?
Well, there it is. If they cannot find bread, let them eat cake. So that seems to be the attitude you seem to have. But no, Ike. Ike. I'm not streaming tonight really because I decided to take 2 days off to recover from flu. Uh, so so let me go drink some lemsip and get some rest. So this is not over. This is not a goodbye to the listeners. By the way, it's over because I really want to push Ike to nail him down. So to be reconvened this conversation, don't worry. I'm going to unbundle this mic, this Ike right there, and get the truth out of him. But don't worry, I've got my sights on you, Ike. So final word from you, Ike.
Good, good conversation. Overall, I think that the side of on the side of people whom have the heroic bent, whom are called to be on more of the risky, chancy side of life and take chances, there needs to be a recognition that the other side is needed, and I guess in the recognition on both sides that look, you need the people whom are going to be ready uh, to be the kindling for the fire when the fire opportunity arises. You cannot predict when the opportunity is going to arise, so you cannot just tell people to wait until the right time, right? don't have revolutionary ideas or revolutionary stances, or take attempts at sharpening your skills, because you don't never know when the marathon is going to happen. It's like, but when the marathon comes, you can't you don't you will not have a year to prepare. So just stay prepared if you're of that bent. And then that is my passing word there, or my last word. And shout out to Elon Musk. I hope he succeeds in his fourth Reich.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, Alex, and thank you to the super chatters, Aiko Gelme, of course, and Ja Zola. So thank you to the super chatters. Thank you, everyone. We'll reconvene almost exactly for tomorrow, but thank you, good night, and peace.